restore it, bring youth voices into decision-making, and put social justice at the heart of this soulless, wasteful, destructive economy. We must dismantle this toxic version of capitalism and replace it with a version that is rights-respecting and nature-regenerating. I suspect by now you might have labeled me as a little bit ideological and extreme. Talk of injustice, devastation, emergency, ecocide, and the need for radical change is far removed from the neutral, more technical language most of us prefer. But these seemingly emotional terms now fit the facts, and they affect change. I'd rather be labeled ideological than mislead the public into complacency. As a parent, and remembering, today is a very emotional day for me, thinking about what motherhood means to my 4 children. As a parent, there is nothing we wouldn't do to save our children and humanity from falling off the cliff. That's how we should see it. I glued myself to the headquarters of a large oil company back in April, frustrated at the lack of vision in the oil-emitting sector from really tackling climate change. I hope you will join me in becoming a rebel for life, where you don't have to glue yourself to anything, but in your hearts, you must start to think about your role in where we need to get to. I commend and support all those working on nature-based solutions, which are the key to sustaining life on Earth. I hope you'll join the rebellion in whatever way you can. Thank you. So just turn over to Marina.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Marina Melanides. I'm 24 years old, and I'm the project lead of Youth for Nature, which is an international youth-led initiative that is empowering and supporting young people to really lead on nature-based solutions. And there are young people all over the world that are already engaging in nature and climate action, and we're trying to elevate and share those stories. I would like to share just one of the stories with you, though, today. It's about Elujalo. Elujalo is 28 years old from Nigeria, and he is taking action by leading farmers or training farmers in his community to really practice climate-smart agriculture techniques like agroforestry. And by doing this, he is repositioning agriculture as a nature-based solution in Nigeria. And Elujalo has gotten some recognition for his leadership in this field. He was invited to attend the UN Youth Climate Summit, which occurred yesterday. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to attend the climate summit. He's also not here to tell his story himself. And that's because his visa was denied to enter the United States. We know what the solutions are. Young people are not wasting any time to implement them. Yet, the decisions about our future are still largely being made without us. We deserve to co-design our own futures, and we are already leading a movement to do that. Yet it has to be more than a movement. It has to translate into a new reality where nature is integrated into every level of decision-making, where leaders unite behind the science, and where solutions are intergenerational. I want to quickly ask everyone here who is over the age of 35 to raise their hands. Most of you. I'm speaking directly to you. This is an invitation to design this new reality together. Bring youth onto your boards, hire them to join your teams, fund youth initiatives, invite young people to implement policy, and we can start today. Can everyone now who is under the age of 35 raise their hands? So keep your hands up. These are the people that I want you to talk to today. These are the people that you're going to work with to co-design this future together. It is clear that we cannot achieve a 1.5 degree target without nature, but I promise you, we cannot achieve it without youth either. Thank you.
Buenas noches con todos, soy Tuntia Catán, vengo de la Amazonía ecuatoriana, no vengo solito, vengo con muchos hermanos y hermanas de la selva y de todas partes del mundo acá para pronunciar y levantar nuestra voz.
Hello everyone. My name is Tuntia Catán. I come from Ecuadorian Amazon. I'm not here alone. With a lot of brothers and sisters who have come here to make our voice be heard.
Los pueblos indígenas del mundo, de distintas partes del mundo, nos hemos resistido cientos de años, porque otro día pasaba en una calle de Nueva York, acá decía Museo Nacional de Indígenas de América.
We indigenous people have been resisting for hundreds of years. Last time I was walking on one street over there, there is an Indian National Museum.
Ahí yo pensé, yo no quiero estar, ni mis hijos no quieren estar en ese museo algún día.
Then I thought, I don't want my children to be in that museum one day.
Nosotros nos resistimos para que no nos maten. Nos resistimos a seguir, queremos seguir viviendo.
We resist not to be killed. We resist because we want to continue living.
Nos resistimos que nuestros territorios sean dañados.
We resist because we don't want our territories to be spoiled.
Nos resistimos que los ríos sean contaminados.
We don't want our rivers to be contaminated.
Por eso estamos aquí, unidos los pueblos indígenas de diferentes partes, para decirles a todos, y los científicos hoy afirmaron, yo vengo de diferentes paneles, los pueblos indígenas han garantizado la vida, tienen la mayor cantidad del bosque del mundo.
So now I come from different panels today, and the science is with us. They're saying indigenous peoples are managing the resources and forests from large parts of the world.
Y los políticos también volvieron a afirmar, los indígenas tienen la mayor cantidad de bosques del mundo, de los ríos del mundo.
And the politicians also said indigenous peoples have most part of forests and rivers from the world.
Entonces, si es así, ¿por qué nos siguen matando? ¿Por qué seguimos deforestando los árboles? ¿Por qué seguimos contaminando los ríos, los océanos? Realmente concluyo que nosotros somos una especie rara.
If that's the reality, why are they killing us? Why are they still contaminating? I finish here. We are really a very rare species.
¿Saben por qué somos una especie rara? Porque nos gusta destruir y luego buscamos cómo reparar. Y no podemos reparar.
We are a very strange species because we like to destroy and then we want to repair, but sometimes we can't just repair.
Entonces, ¿quiénes de aquí están dispuestos a cambiar para restaurar lo que hemos dañado? Alcen la mano, ¿quiénes están dispuestos?
Who here wants to, please raise your hands if you want to restore, if you want to help restore and
Alcen la mano,
repair.
¿quién está dispuesto a reparar?
Please raise your hands if you want to restore.
Algunos
to repair.
no veo por ahí.
Not everyone.
Entonces, hoy es el compromiso que tenemos que empezar.
Now we want your commitment
Por la vida,
for life,
por los ríos,
for the rivers,
por los bosques,
for the forests,
por la vida de nuestras futuras generaciones.
for life of our future generations.
El compromiso empieza hoy.
The commitment begins today.
Gracias, hermanos.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, panel. Thank you for really the very strong call to action. Very great. Thank you, Farhana. Thank you, Marina. Thank you all. Wonderful that you've been with us. Gracias. Thanks again. Beautiful. So now, I mean, we are here. We are all, I think, feeling really chastened by the recognition that we're just not doing well enough. We've got to do better, and putting nature at the center is absolutely essential. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look hard at what the options are. And to help us do this, we're going to have a presentation about a session on food and land use, where we hear the recommendations from the Food and Land Use Global Report, which was launched last week. We're going to look at 10 critical transitions to transform food and land use. To help us do this, I'm going to invite Per Farrow of the Food and Land Use Coalition, lead author of the Food and Land Use Global Coalition Global Consultation Report. I'm also inviting Francis Seymour, Distinguished Senior Fellow at the World Resources Institute, to join Per to discuss this. Francis will interview Per.
So Per, you probably remember when we had our first conversation about this report, I may have expressed a little skepticism that maybe what the world needs is another report. And what I probably didn't tell you is that when I discovered the broad scope of this report, I thought, oh gosh, it's going to be impossible to say anything useful. But I now grudgingly confess that maybe it was precisely that broad scope that led to some of the valuable insights in the report. Is that what you see as its uniqueness value?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree to that. First, let me apologize for reading my notes. My day job is a bureaucrat, and my preferred mode of communication would be to send you all a memo. But as you indicate, Francis, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, right? The report builds on outstanding work by the Intergovernmental Biodiversity Platform, by the International Panel on Climate Change, by the UN International Resource Panel, the Global Nutrition Report, Eat Lancet, World Bank and OECD reports, and so on and so forth. So we are building on what was out there. Second, the report is unique, I think, because it brings together all these insights and adds extensive modeling and analysis demonstrating that we can, at the same time, deliver 30% of the climate solution by 2030. We can halt biodiversity loss and reverse ecosystem loss. We can massively improve public health and food security and generate stronger inclusive development. And we also demonstrate in this report that our recommendations are good economics and good for business. The return on investment is 15-1. The opportunities for private sector value creation are 4.5 trillion annually by 2030. This is an amazing deal. The consequences of business as usual, on the other hand, would place the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement targets out of reach. And within a few decades, that would also threaten our collective security. The third thing that I would emphasize is that we do describe a comprehensive, inclusive development agenda, the 10 critical transitions, which should be on the screens up there, that can credibly deliver these results.
So the graphic that caught my attention was the one about different scenarios for land use allocation. And it suggests that it's actually possible to reallocate significant pieces of real estate from the agriculture sector back to nature. And, you know, to the extent that we have evidence that there isn't this zero-sum trade-off between agriculture and nature, you know, that builds up an argument that I've been making to people for years. And so I was very happy to see it. And I just wonder if, for the audience, you could unpack that diagram a little bit, but also tell us, what do we have to do to achieve that better scenario?
Yeah, it's a really intriguing exhibit. And while conventional wisdom argues that we need more land to produce enough affordable food for more people, and therefore nature will have to yield, this exhibit visualizes how mistaken that perception really is. The basic reason for this misperception is that the inefficiencies in how we currently use our land and produce our food are not that well understood. To fight those inefficiencies, this report grants land an opportunity cost. We recognize that land is one of our most precious resources and must be used efficiently. That approach yields 1.2 billion hectares, which can be returned to nature. That's about 25 times the size of Sweden, and Sweden is not a small country. And this change is the main reason why we can produce a lot of those impressive results that I quoted earlier. Because if we do the right things, there's simply a lot more land available for nature. Nature will then sequester carbon in soils and vegetation and allow wildlife to thrive. And what's better yet is that this shift is actually only a little more than 10% of habitable land. So it has minimal restraining impact on agriculture, but it is a revolution in positive impact for nature and our climate. The change, you asked about how, and it's a bit of an amazing result. It's achievable by changing diets, improving average agricultural productivity, and tackling food loss and waste. In other words, we grow a different and more diverse basket of foods on less land, losing and wasting less. So we free up land. To return that land to nature, governments need to regulate for protected areas, for indigenous peoples' territories, for sustainable land use, and they need to enforce those regulations robustly, cracking down on environmental crime. Governments also need to place systems to reward those that do the work of protecting and restoring nature. And the good news is there is more than $1 trillion annually of public finance available. Public procurement, agricultural support, official development aid that could be repurposed to drive this change. This emphasis on public policy and public finance is a really core part of the report. Private business and financial sector support and innovation is essential for this change to happen. And they will, if incentivized, deliver change. But they can do so at the required speed and scale only if the rules of the system are changed. Thus, governments must lead. The necessary reform agendas for this to happen are described in some detail in the well over 100 pages in chapters 3 and 5 of the report, which I know you will all stay up late tonight to read in detail.
So Per, everybody knows that you and I got to know each other over the last 10 years in the REDD+ space, and I tend to think that forests are first among equals among the nature-based solutions. But I do confess that they are part of a broader story, and I can't resist asking, have you changed any of your views, or what have you learned about forests in this bigger picture?
Well, forests are indispensable, full stop. There is not one single climate model out there that enables us to reach the Paris goals without an almost immediate halting of deforestation. But this report brings the forest story to life as an integral part of a broader inclusive development agenda. Take a look at the cover of the report, for example. It should be up on the screen. This is from a village in India that has been given formal tenure to their surrounding lands. And thanks to their stewardship, we can see from satellite photos that the forest is coming back and nature is returning. They are also enjoying a higher standard of living, more diversified and sustainable diets, and improvements in income. And we see similar effects when indigenous peoples are given right to their traditional lands. So this is about thriving with nature and nature thriving for people.
So Sanjan gave his panelists one takeaway message, but I'm going to be very generous and give you three, Per. When people leave the room tonight, what are the three messages you want them to take with them?
So, first, there is a prevalent view out there that we have to choose between environment and development, and between feeding the world and producing nutritious foods sustainably. The Better Growth Report demonstrates that these dichotomies are simply false. But they are there nonetheless, and their dominant role in our discourse inhibit, reform, and stifle innovation. We need to leave those false dichotomies behind, and we need to start to explore the boundless win-win opportunities of the sustainable change agenda. So that's number one. Number two, this report demonstrates that with the right transformation agenda, food and land use system can deliver what the world needs on food security, on climate change, on biodiversity, on health through enough nutritious food, and on inclusive development. There are trade-offs for some individuals, some communities. Those communities and individuals must be supported to ensure a just transition. But overall, this is equitable change. It is very good for most people. The only obstacle to systemic change is political will. Third, most importantly, this report is both substantial and political. We build on the best science. We have done serious modeling, extensive analysis. We have consulted widely. We are completely confident about the substantial solidity of our recommendations. At the same time, our key message is deeply political, even moral and ethical. The message is that we, countries, businesses, farmers, investors, civil society, citizens, consumers, are facing an existential choice. It is up to us to choose the better future that is there for the taking. Or we can choose to sleepwalk into a future no one would want their children to experience. So I want you all to ask yourself, which side will you be on? We need profound political mobilization to drive this transformation. And that always starts with individuals and small groups of people deciding they will no longer accept the status quo. Why not start with everyone in this room? Either we shape a better future or we get change we will not like. I'd like to finish by quoting my favorite sage, Yoda of Star Wars. Do or do not, there is no try.
Thank you very much indeed.
Awesome. Thank you, Per.
Francis Seymour, Per Farrow, wonderful, thank you, beautiful, thank you very much. And see, evidence, focus, people-centered, and then the extra point that Per Farrow raised, this is about trade-offs, and trade-offs means political choices. And that's why the next part of this discussion is really going to be about how the different pieces of the puzzle fit together, their interlinkages, and we're going to be hearing from some politicians with responsible roles and how they are factoring nature and biodiversity into their work. And to introduce the panel, it's with great, great pleasure that I offer our colleague, Dr. Cristiana Pasca-Palmer, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Biodiversity Convention, or CBD. Dr. Pasca-Palmer, welcome.
My name is Cristiana Pasca-Palmer. I'm the head of the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, and I'm really happy to see a full room here today. That means that you care, and that means that you're prepared to take action. I'm not going to insist on the numbers and on the statistics. We had excellent speakers before to tell you how dire the situation is, that we are in a planetary emergency, and what that means is not only the climate change crisis, it's affecting us, but the biodiversity loss. We are really facing a sixth extinction. The oceans are suffering tremendously. Pollution is high. And overall, we are faced with a situation that perhaps we never faced in our history as humanity, and that is a threat, an existential threat to our life. Now, we are here to speak, and this is a panel about nature-based solutions. So I would like us to focus the conversation on solutions and on actions, because as my TIS Christiana Figueres was saying earlier, we cannot be paralyzed in inaction by the very worrying news that we are hearing from science. So what are we doing about it? And because this is a climate summit that brought us all in this beautiful city, but it's not the end of the road. I think it's just the beginning of what I hope to be a phenomenal road moving into the next year and moving us into the next decade. Indeed, the scientists tell us we have about 10 years to get it right, and that means curve the emissions of the greenhouse gases, but at the same time curve upwards the biodiversity loss. And that's not an easy task. It's not an easy task because it will require systemic, radical transformations and reforms in pretty much everything that we know. In policies, in the way we do business, in the way we consume, in the way we interact with nature or connect with nature. And that means that will require all of us together. Now, what is happening in the next year, also called the 2020 Super Year at the UN, is a series of events that I think provide us with a unique opportunity to move the needle forward, but in an accelerated way. It's culminating for us, at least in our community. Next year in October, China will host the UN Biodiversity Conference, and that is when all our countries, 196, will come together to design, negotiate, and agree the next global policy for biodiversity. Now, that should not remain just a nice strategy on paper. It should really be, I hope, a document that will unlock implementation and get us off this dangerous path that we are right now. So to address that, I invited 3 fantastic champions and ministers, because they have a key role to play. They are, in many respects, in the driving seat of implementation through the policies that are adopting in their countries. And I would like to start by introducing Minister Ola Elvestuen, which is the Minister of Environment and Climate Change of Norway, a great champion. And we also have next to him Minister Matos Fernandes from Portugal, and the Minister from UAE, Dr. Thani bin Ahmed Al-Zayed, if I pronounce that correctly. Each and every one of them, in their own right, in their own countries, are very ambitious in what they do, but they're also very connected to international efforts. And as we said, this is about a collective effort. This is about joining hands, government with businesses, with civil society, with indigenous people, with scientists, all of us together. So let me start with Minister Elvestuen, and I would like to ask you if you can share some examples or highlights from your own initiatives at a domestic level, but more so, what is your view about how we move this forward into building a momentum for COP15 next year in China?
First of all, I think really I got on the last session, when I look at the Food and Land Use Coalition report that we just got, I think that is really the blueprint that I also need when we work together in the years ahead. Because everything I work with, it has to do really on 3 areas. One is they have to cut fossil fuels as fast as possible. And in Norway, I think we are doing that, especially in transportation. Every second car is now a fully battery electric car. We work on green shipping, we work on public transportation, that all buses are becoming electric, etc. The other part is that it is not enough just to stop the destruction of nature. We need more nature in the future. And that is, domestically, we are working on that, and how we manage our fisheries, how we manage our oceans. I also have to struggle, as many politicians have, to how do we get more preserved areas also in Norway. But then on the third area that we work with is really the great channels, and that is how do we develop a global market economy within the boundaries of nature. And that's really when we had to start, how do we make our food, as the last session just met. And the ideas that are presented, that there's no trade-off between preserving nature, cutting emissions and what we need to do to feed a world of 9-10 billion people. This is really at the core of what we do. And that's really also when we start to think of a true circular economy, where we have to manage resources a totally different way. And this, when you start to think that how I have a global economy, that's all, in my view, that's also really when the Sustainable Development Goals get its true meaning. Because that's when you see you cannot pick some of them. You have to achieve and reach every single one of them to reach our goals, to have that preservation in the future. And of course, from Norway's side, we have put our emphasis internationally on saving forests. 10 years ago, the government decided, I was also presented in an earlier video, that the easiest way to have a solution to catch carbon and make it grow is to save a tree. And the easiest solution is not to cut down trees. So for 10 years, we have developed cooperation with the rainforest countries so that we can support their efforts to support their rainforest. And we have also decided, and it's a broad agreement, that this effort should be kept and put forward, at least also at the same level, at least at the next decade. So we develop agreements. We just signed an agreement today with Gabon on how we can support how Gabon, a country with a great amount of rainforest, but a very low deforestation, but we can then support it, and it is a country with the size of a rainforest, the size of Great Britain. So this is how we need to move forward. Finance is a key, but then we have to have this cooperation where we put forward our efforts, but then find this right way to cooperate with countries with the rainforest so that we can stop that catastrophic destruction that we see today.